Welcome to the Shortwave Show, everyone. I'm so happy that you are joining me on a very special time, 3 p.m. on the East Coast, not 7 p.m., but 3 p.m., because I have a very interesting show this evening. And you're saying, Larry, interesting show? Yes, which means you should be liking and commenting and sharing already, just to make sure that your friends rush over here as quickly as possible to see this very interesting show. You have to trust me on this one. It is true. It is very special. Please do that if you could. I would appreciate it, because today we're going to talk about something that I did not think I'd be talking about in 2022. We're asking a very important question. When should a Libertarian Party candidate for president announce or begin their campaign? When should it happen? And with me, I have the one, the only, formerly of Florida, now of Virginia, and before of Virginia, so kind of both, the man himself, former police officer, for congressional congressman, candidate, love it, the man himself, Ter Maat. How are you, sir?
Good, Larry. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I do look forward to answering your question about, when should a candidate announce, because I believe the right day is today. And I believe today. And I believe that the right way to do it is on the Sharp Way special at 3 p.m.
I have to agree completely. So tell me, is it true you are actually running for president, Libertarian Party 2024? Is that
we're
real?
Starting to spread the word today that I'll be seeking the nomination from the Libertarian Party for the presidential run in 2024. We have a good team together. We have a pile of money together. We have what we believe is the right plan and messaging, and we're very, very excited about it.
I got to tell you, I am surprised, however, not unhappy about this. I really think that I've been talking about for a long time. We should be running earlier. I didn't think 2 years, but I'll take it. The Republicans do it. Democrats do it. Absolutely. Right. So I'm glad you're thinking early. I'm glad you're building a team out. I mean, when I ran for governor last time, I ran a year and a half out. This time I ran a year out. So yeah, you have to run out early. We've made the error in the LP too many times to kind of say, let's wait till after the convention, then we'll start running. And then we have like 5 months and we get our butt kicked. I love this idea. So let me ask the most basic reason, the basic question. Why did you decide to do it now? I mean, you could have done this next 2028. You could have done it in 2020. I know you're doing Congress and back a couple years ago, but I mean, you could have done it then. You decided now.
Yep.
Why now?
For a couple of different reasons. I think the two big issues are whether or not a candidate has a deficit to make up in terms of name recognition, and I do.
Sure.
And the other issue is sort of the complexity of the story. I have what I believe to be the right story, the right background, but I'm going to be running a campaign that combines bold messaging with very, very credible solutions and in some detail. And that just, by its nature, requires some time to bring people on board. And of course, the name recognition. Yeah, the name recognition issue is a big one for the moment. I believe our team believes that we have all the right assets in place. I think we can run a campaign that fits well with my complex background, but the name recognition isn't there, certainly outside the state of Florida.
Sure.
Good to see you at the Florida convention, by the way, Larry.
Yes, not fair. For anyone who doesn't know, we shared the stage on Florida. It's true, we did. Yes,
we did. I had the good fortune of being able to introduce you, and a great joy it was. So there's, in terms of building up name recognition, there's just no substitute for time and hard work.
Sure.
And so we plan on getting a jump on that. We'll be in Reno, so it'll be a good chance to start spreading the word right then and there.
So there are three, I think, pieces that I've personally thought were important when we select a presidential candidate. And often we haven't had it. And I think it's important to have those three. And one of them is, I think before, and this is not a rule, this is my opinion. Obviously, the delegates can pick who they want to pick, right? But my thought process is, I think we need someone who has raised at least six figures by the time they get to the convention. I would like seven, obviously, but I would take six. You raise six figures before you get there. That to me means, okay, now in my view, you are eligible to be selected, right? Two, you want to have at least a 5-person executive team. I think if you have that, now at least in my view, you are eligible to be selected. And then three, you want to have a press reel. You want to have already been somehow in the press and people have seen you and, you know, you didn't flub the second someone asks you a question, right? And whether that is as the presidential candidate or as something else, maybe if you ran for Congress or whatever, but that you've been in the press and that people know that you're not going to just flub the second someone asks you a question. So let me walk down that road. How do you get those six figures?
Well, for starters, I should admit that we've already had our first FEC filing, and we have already disclosed that we have $100,000 in the bank.
Already,
today.
You're already there. Check box.
Well,
love it.
Yeah, and we'll be doing some more of that. And I do have strong opinions on how to not only raise money, but to spend it on the other side of the nomination. As you may know, our party's nominees raised about $8 million, I believe it was, coming out of the nominating convention last time. And I have an idea about how that money is better spent in order to snowball into greater fundraising capabilities going forward. So while I agree with you that you have to demonstrate a commitment over the next 2 years, or whether if you announce with 2 weeks to go over the last 2 weeks,
Right.
But I do also believe that you have to be familiar with modern campaigning and what happens after that nomination takes place.
Okay. I like all of that. Okay, then I'm assuming that my next one's already done, which means to raise that kind of money, you already put a team together. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are two different issues for me, but I do have a team together. We have a very strong team, I believe. People who are, chairs and past chairs of counties and even the LNC itself. I've got a mix of Mises people and people who are not in the Mises caucus. You and I are Mises, of course. But as you and I would readily acknowledge, there's a great wealth of talent, Mises caucus around the party. And so we've got a team that's mixed in that way and a lot of different viewpoints. So I'm very excited about the team as one of our great assets. And we'll be building the team, by the way, as we go forward. We consider our team to be possibly only half in place. We've got, I guess, a total of, oh boy, I better not miscount. I think we're at 15 at this point. But we will be adding some folks. With a team that large, you do have some food fights.
Yes.
We've already had a couple.
I know the feeling.
So, yeah. You and the rest of the libertarian world would know nothing about food fights when it comes to getting a bunch of people together.
Absolutely. So I guess the other piece becomes, and this is kind of a two-part question, right? How in the world do we break out of the libertarian kind of echo chamber, right? Our bubble, and then get into mainstream press? And I know that a lot of people think mainstream press is bad, mainstream media is bad, but to be forward, you and I both know this, a lot of people who vote, they watch mainstream media. That's what they do. They watch it. Yeah. So once they go, this Mike guy's not real. Oh, wait a minute. I saw him on mainstream. Now he's real, right? Now he's a real guy because I saw him on my talking head talked about him. And if my talking head says Mike's okay, then I guess Mike's okay. So how do we get to that?
We do have to get to that, and you're absolutely right. And you don't even always need the talking heads to say you're okay. You just need to say that you exist, right?
Valid point.
There are plenty of cases where we would take a talking head saying, Larry's no good, don't vote for him. But you'd have a lot of clicks all of a sudden, and 100%. You'd wonder why the silly talking head was so worried about you or concerned. Yes. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But the answer to that is complex, which is part of the reason why it has been difficult to achieve in the past. Number one, you have to have an ability to meet people where they are on issues.
Sure.
In other words, we need to campaign in a way that doesn't just advance what we would like the world to look like in 100 years. We need to also campaign on what we would like to do in 100 days, right? These are the very specific things that we would do to address the things that are on the top of people's minds, on the top of voters' minds. So, for example, you and I would love it if there were no more wars and the United States would stop, being the antagonist so often. We need to say that loud and boldly, but we need to be able to say specifically, we would exit NATO, and here's how, and here's why. And while that may sound specific to libertarians, it's actually sufficiently complicated that I believe that even that needs to be broken down.
I like that idea. I'm with you. Yes. Because also something else, Mike, that you're bringing up, that sounds scary to people, right? So I think, right, if I'm the average American, I've been told that NATO is saving the world, right? It's saving the world. The world is awesome because we're in NATO and we're saving the world. But if you're going to say we got to get out of NATO, I'm going to be afraid. And if you can't walk me out of that, I'm going to need hand holding or I'm going to be afraid. I think I love the idea.
Yeah, a lot of hand holding. And we have to be able to demonstrate that it's in America's interest in the short run and the long run. And we have to be able to demonstrate why the European powers, I do not try to use that word sarcastically. I mean, they need to bone up. They need to get a little bit stronger. And the first step has to be to communicate that to them, right? We can't have our European friends spending 1.5 to 2.5% of GDP on their militarization and rely on us to back them up and bail them out. And for us to keep spending 6%, 5%, 4%, we should be spending a hell of a lot less. They need to be spending more. And that doesn't mean that we can't be friends and partners. It just means that we all need to do a better job at taking care of our own problems.
Yeah.
And parenthetically, from the United States point of view, we need to keep our nose out of other people's problems sometimes.
But I think you brought up another right point, right? The idea that most Americans feel, and again, I'm going with I feel that most Americans aren't thinking as deeply as we often do, right? So when you say, we got to pull away or pull out, their heads immediately go to what our enemies will say. See, they're isolationists. They're going to let the next Hitler take over the entire world. And I know it sounds hyperbole to us as libertarians. We're going to laugh at that. But I really think there are people who are really afraid to go, oh, my God, which is why I love what you're saying. You are talking about literally holding their hands and going, no, let me show you how we do this. Let me show you.
Yeah, it's real important. I think the Obama administration, for example, got this wrong and came to be perceived as a little bit isolationist, the Trump administration as well. The Obama administration wanted to pull back in certain ways and did so, but they did so in a way that left Americans feeling like the Obama administration didn't like the United States or the American attitude of spreading goodwill around the globe. We don't want to be isolationists. As a matter of fact, I do believe that we can well serve the United States in terms of our American citizens and our economy, especially in terms of foreign trade, by being more proactive in very positive ways. But that does not include regime change. It does not include using the points of guns and bayonets to get our point across, right? We need to be leaders in the world because we are the leading democracy and the oldest constitution that's worth a damn. So we need to be out there and get our message out. But we undermine that by being so militaristically aggressive.
So if people are interested in seeing what you're doing, Mike, they can head over to MikeTermaat.com. The link is in the description and also right here at the bottom. That's how you... Can you pronounce your name again to make sure I didn't screw it up? Did I do it right?
No, you pronounced it correctly, but I'd be happy to say it again. It's Mike Ter Maat. Your name is pronounced Larry Sharp. You do not pronounce the E.
That's correct.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
But MikeTermaat.com is our relatively new website, and we talk about some of the issues there and have a couple of introductory videos. we're going to be going after issues, Larry, that I believe do a good job not only of positioning the Libertarian Party, but that I can personally add some value to, that leverage my background as an economist. For example, I worked for the White House. I've worked for the World Bank. I've been an advocate of free markets on behalf of the financial services industry, and I was an entrepreneur in the business of educating bankers. I had my work referenced by the Federal Reserve Chairman, and I've met with the Fed in the boardroom itself. So I've been around in terms of monetary policy and fiscal policy, and I believe that the libertarian objectives that we all believe in, keeping in check the federal government in terms of spending and scope, and reining in the Federal Reserve monetary policy, those objectives are very bold, but they're very doable, and we can get them done up to and including ending the Fed, which, sounds awfully scary. When I mentioned to my friends outside the party, and even some friends inside the party, we need to take a look at ending the Fed, and here's how I think it ought to be done. People say that's crazy, that's scary. What are we going to do? Trade wampum at the grocery store? That's the reaction.
You're totally correct. Yes, I love what you. I got to say it again. I love the thing that I talk about constantly. One reason why I do this show and why I'm always out there is because I know it takes time to get people to wrap their head around the idea. I tell this story often. When I was in when I used to work before I was doing this, one of the things I do is leadership training, and some of my clients are government agencies. One of them was a New York City agency. So I'm doing a class, and they know that I'm politically active, but we never talk about politics unless it's during a break or lunch or something, right? So it's during a break, and this is probably 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago in that area. And there's a bunch of people in a room. If you can imagine the group of people, they are mostly men, but some women. Youngest is maybe 30, oldest is maybe 60. So in that age range, they're all educated, and they're all credentialed professionals because they work for the department.
Right, they're New York City employees.
Correct, all New York City employees. And during the break, one of them says something like this: "Man, I'm so glad we had the Fed in 2008. They saved us." And I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say a word because they didn't ask. But then one guy looks at me and goes, "Isn't that right, Larry?" And I thought to myself, okay, now you messed up. You should not have said that. But they did. So all I said was, you guys know that the Fed is basically just a private banking cartel, right? It's just a private bank. They're like, "No, it isn't. No, it isn't." I said, "You have your phones. Google it." And they're like, "No, he's dumb." And they Google it, and then all of a sudden you hear, "What? Huh? Oh my God, he's right." I'm like, "Yeah." And did you know that it just magically makes money? "No, it doesn't." I said, "Google it. You're right there. Google it." They Google it. Oh my God. And why do I tell that story? Because these are educated government workers, credentialed, and not one of them knew that.
No,
which is
we take
why
so
what
much
you're
for
saying
granted,
is right.
don't we?
You've got to walk them through it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just, to leverage that. We take so much for granted as people. You and I, of course, have been involved in public policy for a long time. I started worrying about banking, and I got my first job at the bank in 1983. Most of your audience doesn't even know what 1983 means.
Yes.
But for most people, these are not issues that they grapple with on a even an annual basis, much less day to day. It would be sort of like, I don't know what your background is, but if someone asked me to explain how vaccines work, I don't think that would be a good idea, right? You probably don't want my opinion on the biology of a vaccination or anything else going on in your body.
Absolutely. Right.
But when it comes to public policy in terms of fiscal policy, I worked for the Office of Management and Budget at the White House. I am a firm believer that Milton Friedman was right, that we need to cap spending, not necessarily debt or taxation, but the root is how much the government is allowed to spend. I think that we'd be better off if that were backed up by a constitutional amendment, but there are ways to go at that even without it. And that needs to be done. And people need to understand that it sounds scary, but we can walk our way step by step to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So John says, congrats on raising the money, Mike. So there we go. I like that.
I appreciate that. A little bit of hard work and a lot of money on my own.
There we go. But John brings up an important point. He says, Mises seems to be lining up behind Dave Smith. How would you split that nomination vote? Well, let me touch that for a second if I could. This is a question, John, and I don't know this. Is Dave actually running? And I only say this because, not because I'm against Dave running, but people have been saying I'm running for a long time. I'm not running. Until I hear Dave say he's running, maybe he is, but if he doesn't say it, that could be a bunch of people who just want him to run saying that. People who want people to run. People say Spike's running. I didn't hear Spike say it either. I mean, maybe Spike's running. I think his wife would disagree with that. I'm just saying, maybe he's running.
Right.
But Spike didn't say it. I didn't say it. Dave didn't say it. Only person so far who said it is you. So I know you're running. That I'm sure of. The rest,
right,
maybe. But he has a valid point. There are other people pumping other people, right? Spike or Dave,
and
or whoever.
that'll continue to be the case, and it's part of the reason why I wanted to get out in front of this issue. I believe that our campaign is going to be very different from anybody else's in terms of the veracity of our solutions, the detailed nature, and the background to back it up. We're not going to be a campaign that is what I would call bold minus. We're going to be bold plus. In other words, we're not one of these campaigns that's compromised by, well, we can't bite off more than we can chew. We have to be pragmatic. Nor are we one of these campaigns that just howls at the moon and doesn't actually understand what it is that we're asking for. We are going to be bold plus. We're going to have the boldest messaging backed up by real world solutions that come along with having been a policy practitioner for a long, long time. So I do not believe that there's going to be another campaign that's going to be able to bring the same combination of tools and background to the table. And I believe that by getting out ahead of this early, we'll be able to show people and demonstrate that to people. And I'm confident that people will react to that positively.
Have you decided? It's a question from Joe. He says, who would you like to be your VP? Have you decided that you're running kind of on your own? You'll take whoever the VP is? Have you decided that you don't know who your VP is yet? Have you decided you are going to run as a ticket? Have you made a decision on that yet?
I think we have made a decision that we're not going to run as a ticket. I think that it makes sense for everyone to have a little bit more flexibility. If someone wanted a VP that we have to poach away from another ticket, we'll maintain that flexibility. There are not only the names we just mentioned, but plenty of other names who would make wonderful sense. But it's important for us, because of our unique combinations of name recognition deficit, but public policy assets, it's important for us to get out early. And there's not going to be another candidate who has a similar set of tools to contribute that wants to get out there this early, right? So in that sense, there's a bit of a mismatch. We have a more complicated story to tell and a longer story to tell. We got to go early, and time will tell how the other half plays out.
So are you ready now to take volunteers, or is it too early for you?
We're ready now to take volunteers. I think that what we're doing is taking names. I've had a half a dozen people in the last 36 hours reach out to me and ask what it is that they can do to help, which is awfully kind and flattering. But we won't really be able to put the volunteer nose to the grindstone, I don't think, until on the other side of Reno and probably into the fall, right? We need to get a lot of ducks in a row, so to speak, to be able to take advantage of that. But soon. So, and it's not too soon to get people involved.
John is asking for your social media accounts. Are you on all the things? Are you on the Facebooks and the Twitter and the Instagram and everything?
We're on the Facebooks and the Twitter at Ter Maat Mike, and you can link to everything else from there. Yeah, we're on Facebook, and we participate in a lot of Facebook groups around the United States, both Mises and the state-based groups. Yeah, we've got an Instagram. We haven't done too much on TikTok yet, but that's an exciting.
Up and coming.
It's
up and
yeah,
coming.
I'm going to follow your leadership on that, Larry.
Yes, up and coming. So Joe asks a very important question, which I think is very interesting, and I'd love to hear this one too. How did your congressional campaign prepare you to run for president? I'm sure you learned lessons during that campaign and did some things right and some things wrong, and you could, fix certain things and expound on others. Was that helpful or no?
It was helpful. And there were things that we learned that are sort of a tactical nature. As a matter of fact, I put out a couple of videos, the things I learned in terms of team building and process, and another video on messaging, things that we learned. But I will tell you, Larry, the most important thing I learned is sort of an attitude adjustment. One of the things that people had told me before the campaign that I refused to believe, and now I'm convinced that it has to be taken to heart. There are a number of Americans for whom the Libertarian Party brand is not only not very strong, but is for a number of people arguably negative. I'll let that sink in. In other words, there are a number of people that you could do a better job of reaching if you were self-described independent rather than a self-described libertarian. And I think that means not that we should be throwing in the towel, but that we need to work very, very hard at how we brand our party.
Yep.
And if there's anything that I want this campaign to accomplish, it's to convince everybody in our party that we need to take very seriously how we present ourselves. And that must be in the context of what people's concerns and worries and problems are. It cannot be in the context of what we're pissed about today.
Right. Yes. But we're good at that last part, though. We're good at that last part.
We're very good, especially when we're pissed at each other.
Yes, absolutely. So let me ask, I guess, the question that everyone's going to be asking you. Come on, Mike, you're a good guy. You're smart, you have good plans. How are you going to win this thing, right? So let me walk down that road. Do you have, a path to victory? And I say for myself, I'm running for governor. I get that question all the time. And I've expressed my path for victory. And I've also expressed what could be a secondary or tertiary win in that regard. Do you have any of those? You have a path to victory, or do you have secondary and tertiary victories?
Yes, but let's talk about the path to victory first before we come off of that. And I need to ask you, are you talking about a path to victory for the nomination, or to join the White House team?
To be the one in the White House, to be the 47th president of the United States?
Well, it depends on how many we have between now and then.
Well, that's a good point. So 47th or 48th or 49th.
Assuming Joe can ride out his term.
Correct. Right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay. Look, and this speaks to why this campaign is so important. Not only is the brand of the Libertarian Party not very strong and arguably negative for a number of people, but that means necessarily that we don't get recognition from the press. Not getting recognition from the press, that's a yin and yang. That's a chicken and egg, right? People don't care about us because the press doesn't, and vice versa. For us to become full players in the American political process, we need very strong leadership at the top. There is no such thing, historically speaking, as a party in the United States that's been successful with nothing but grassroots efforts. We have to have strong candidacy at the top. In the United States, for better or for worse, that means you must participate in the presidential candidate debates. Full stop. There's no reason to go further with the conversation if you're not prepared to do whatever it takes to get into that debate. This means a couple of things. Number one, it means you have to come out blasting right out of the nomination.
Yep.
If you have $8 million, the right strategy is not to say, well, I've got $8 million and I got 4 months, so I guess that's $2 million a month. No, if you have $8 million, you should spend it by 4 o'clock.
I like that.
and
we got nominated at noon, 4 o'clock, it's all gone. I love it. I love it.
That's right. And the reason for that is because you need to get the ball rolling. As you said some minutes ago, you're either in the mainstream or you're not.
Yeah.
And while I'm a big believer in earned media for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it's all that we can get,
sure.
The media responds to purchased media.
100%. Pay to play.
Yeah, you got to pay to play. So you have to spend it as quickly as you can raise it, because you need to get name recognition and some attention well in advance of when the polls are taken, well in advance of when the debate is decided.
Yeah. There
in
is
other
a
words,
piece I want to bring up with that, though, right? You probably heard recently, the Republican Party has said it is no longer going to participate in any of the debates that are run by the Commission on Presidential Debates.
That's
I
right.
feel like that gives us an opening this time, because now the rules are in flux, right? So it's going to be much more about who do people want to see than anything else, right? Versus, oh, do you have the threshold of this, or I move the line or whatever. I feel like this would be the right timing for you. If you're popular, that should be enough.
That's right. So, obviously what we're hoping for is it's no longer the 15% barrier that has been put up in the past, and how the polls are taken and which ones are used. All of those have been used as barriers against us. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it has not been easy for us to break through. So the rules being in flux is a huge opportunity. By the way, it's also a huge opportunity that the Republican and Democratic parties have become very adept at posting up crummy candidates as well.
That too, yes.
So, we got that going for us. And the fact that they hate each other, they drift farther and farther away from the Constitution in their efforts to suppress each other, that people are starting to recognize that, get sick of it. These are all opportunities for us, right? So there are reasons to be optimistic, but it must go through that debate. And the other thing I was going to mention is, in addition to just being popular, getting your word out fast, all of which is very, very important, you need to have a candidate that people can at least imagine being in the job.
Yes, agreed.
It may be a bit of a stretch in certain circumstances, right? This was Donald Trump's biggest hurdle, right? It wasn't name recognition. It was, can you imagine him actually doing the job?
Right.
It's the reason why so many people thought he wouldn't win, because so many people could not imagine that, right? But enough people eventually did for that to work out. It means that for us to take advantage of the opportunity that we're going to have, we need to post a candidate who not only you could imagine having the background to do the job. That doesn't, I mean, I know this sounds a little bit self-serving. I'm the only candidate who's actually worked for the White House in the past.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have, 20 years in public policy like I do.
Sure.
But you have to have enough that people can imagine that. And I also believe that there's a piece of that Donald Trump overcame that I think is very difficult. And that is maybe not a reverence for public service, but a little bit of respect for the role.
Sure.
I think that a little bit of respect for the process is what I would say.
Yeah, but I think your difference is not necessarily respecting the government power, but respecting the service aspect of it.
That's exactly right.
to help others, to service the community. That is what I'm here for.
That's exactly right. It can't
Right.
be about you. It can't be about me.
Right.
And I don't think people realize when they were electing Donald Trump to the extent to which he viewed it as all about him. I think
right.
One could argue he tricked us a little bit in that space. But yeah, that's what I mean about respect for the role, respect for the process.
Now, I brought that up because Kirsten brought this up. She was asking about, getting libertarians into the debates, right? So I'm glad you answered that question. She was concerned, is that going to be helpful? And I think you're right. I think you've hit it perfectly. I think that is an issue. But I now have to go to kind of an inside libertarian question. What you're talking about is very similar to the 2016 Gary Johnson campaign thought process. Not the same, but it's similar. They were all about getting out hard. They were all about getting in debates. That did create two problems. Problem one, he wanted to get in debates so hard, he picked someone who he thought was popular and would help him get in debates, in the case of Bill Weld. I have a personal issue there because I lost to Bill Weld. It was not a Johnson Sharp ticket. It was a Johnson Weld ticket. But I love Gary Johnson, and I understand his logic. I do. I understand why he did it. I clearly disagree. But I understand why, because he was thinking in a similar manner to you. He also pushed heavily on that. And the other issue is, then once he didn't get in debates, the campaign really struggled after that because they had no goal. So I would ask the same two questions of you now, knowing what Gary Johnson did in 2016. Are you going to be like, hey, I need to get some, I need to go get Mitt Romney or, whatever to be my VP or something like that, right? Whatever the case may be. And or what happens if, to Kirsten's point, what happens if there are no official debates, right? What happens if there's just a bunch of side debates here or there by local people because the big debates don't ever happen? How do you get over those two separate hurdles?
Well, I think the side debates can be just as useful to us, right? It just means that you have to be better at getting your butt on an airplane and getting off of an airplane. And be willing to go through whatever process is put up. I don't believe it'll be the case that there's absolutely no opportunity for candidates to be pitted against one another. I think we're just waiting to figure out what that structure is going to be, what the hurdles are going to be. The hurdles will be a stretch for us. That will make them important because I do believe it'll come down to three candidates. Regarding the vice presidential selection and doing something in order to reach out to as many people as possible, and I take it the flip side, the implication of your question is compromising what is it you're standing for. Remember that we're not trying to get 100% of the American public on board, first of all.
Sure. Yep.
Right? What we're trying to get is that hurdle to get into the debate. Once we can get into the debate, we can make the case for why people should come to our positions.
Sure.
As long as our positions, as bold as they may be, and they are backed up and make sense and address people's real concerns, right? Let's not lead with getting rid of driver's licenses. I'm not a big fan of driver's licenses. It's something that should have been handled in the private sector. It's something that insurance companies should handle.
But it's not a presidential issue.
It's not a presidential issue, and it's not going to stop the United States from getting into the next war in Southeast Asia.
It's true. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And just as importantly, from a political standpoint, people are not marching at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue because of driver's licenses.
Absolutely. Valid point.
Right?
Both valid
when
points.
I see the torches go up and the people coming out the dirt road for the castle, I'll know that, and they're carrying picket signs that say, end driver's licenses now.
Right. Yes.
Right. Then then we'll have to pivot and I'll be wrong.
Right.
But we need to address the issues that are changing people's lives in the United States.
Right. So let me then let me ask one of the more important questions on a personal level. I'm not even saying most, all of the presidential candidates in the past have all done what I would call the 50 state method, right? We got to get to everyone and everything. I've always been against that. I've always thought it's better if you start in an area that's more friendly to you, that's more open to you. And I did it when I ran for governor in New York in 2018. I focused on areas where nobody else would go, smaller towns where nothing's really happening because they're smaller towns. So I would show up and spend time there, and I'd get in a local newspaper. And in certain areas of New York State in 2018, certain precincts, I actually got over 20% of the vote.
Yeah.
And in certain counties, I got 8 or 9% of the vote, which again, for a party that's never gotten more than 1% in New York State, that's amazing, right? So I did a lot because of that. And then I grew from that. Do you have an idea on running this campaign? If you don't have it yet, it's fine. But do you have an idea on how you're going to kind of make that work? I mean, it's a massive country, right? So how do you make that work?
Well, yes. And it's going to sound contradictory to the get $8 million, spend $8 million, then hope that produces another $2 million by Friday strategy. I do believe you are correct about biting off areas where you can make an impact. As a matter of fact, let me say the same thing with slightly different words. Pick an area where you can piss people off.
Okay.
Okay. Where can I find a state small enough that I can make an impact, big enough that somebody would care, but close enough Republican Democrat, where I can make an impact and get everyone worried.
Yes.
You see where I'm going?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would pick a couple of states. Yes, I have them in mind.
Okay.
Where one is maybe 55-45, another is 45-55. So they're just sufficiently askew that the parties aren't used to worrying too much.
Right. Yep. I like that idea.
But where I can go in under the radar, piss them off, because nothing gets media like pissed off politicians.
100%. Agreed. Yep. In fact, it happened to me yesterday, by the way, just a side note. Yesterday, there is our DA in Manhattan is taking a lot of heat for screwing up and letting people out and all that kind of stuff, right? A lot of heat. So yesterday I'm at an event, over 100 people, getting signatures, everything's going well. And someone says, Larry, I want to know, there's a rumor, is it true? I said, there's a rumor? She's like, yeah. I said, what? Yeah, that you gave money to the Manhattan DA. I said, they're saying that? She went, yeah. I said, oh, so good. She's like, what, did you do it? Of course not. I said, but once the lies come out, once the attacks come, that means they're scared. That's awesome. I said, you've made my night, right?
Yeah.
That happened to me in 2018 too. The second they thought that all of a sudden Larry Sharpe was doing well, all of a sudden I was anti-Second Amendment. All of a sudden I was anti-law enforcement. I was anti all these things all of a sudden. Meanwhile, I'm the only pro-2A guy. My dad was in law enforcement. I don't know how I'm anti these things, but that's when I knew it was working. And the worst part, again, this is I'm basically supporting your point. What wound up happening then was that people thought, some people thought, is Larry Sharpe a bad guy? But most thought, who's Larry Sharpe? And they looked me up and go, I like this guy. I don't see anything about this stuff they said. No, I like this guy. So in reality, I began to grow a bit. So the lies began, but then they began to slow down a little bit because they realized, it's not working. So I think you're totally correct. If they start going, this Mike guy is an enemy of the state, you are winning.
Well, I think that's exactly right. So just for examples, these are off the top of my head. Don't hold me to these. But if you were to be able to force a Republican to campaign in a Western state, right? If you went into Nebraska, which should be red and, but it's not that big. It's not that red. If you forced a Republican to campaign there, you'd get noticed.
Right. Yes.
If you forced a Democrat to campaign in, wait for it, New Hampshire.
Yep.
You get where I'm going there.
100%. I'm with you. I agree. I love these ideas. I love these
ideas. You could really have something.
I love it.
That doesn't mean you go after California first.
Right. Yes, of course.
Right.
So then I guess let me give you a softball if I could. Let me just throw a softball at you. can you tell me what you think is your most interesting or most important issue for you and how you would tackle it? Something that you think this is the big one or one of the big ones. There's a million issues, obviously, but is there one of them that you go, this one I think really matters, and here's how I would tackle that issue?
Well, I don't like to necessarily prioritize them, but let me speak chronologically. The first one that we want to roll out is End the Fed. And the reason for that is that I think it's a slogan that a lot of people have recognized. It has, in some cases, turned out to be divisive because, you know, people think it's either silly, right? Or they just love the idea. They don't care if it's silly. But I do think that we can back that up. I put a video together about a 3-point plan. And we are...
Is that on your website?
It is on the website. It's the second video. We're going to be promoting that in Reno. I think it dovetails not only with our concern about monetary policy and my own background personally, but it also dovetails with how we feel about, e-currencies generally, right? By the way, we're going to be giving away, I don't know if I'm allowed to put a commercial on your show here, Larry.
Commercial away, please. Go ahead.
We're giving away $1,000 of worth of Bitcoin in a raffle in Reno. You just got to come by the table and fill out your raffle card, okay?
Give you a reason to come by.
This is a bald-faced attempt to collect contact information and boost conversations, but it's also a good way to make $1,000 in Bitcoin if anyone wants it. It's there for the taking.
Speaking of commercials, I have one too, libertarianism.com. So for those of you who want to support the show, we go from Mike's commercial to my commercial, back and forth. This is about the capitalist society. I love it, right? So libertarianism.com helps support the show. If you care about this and you have friends who are saying, you know, is this Mike guy talking about libertarianism? Yeah, he is. You can go to his site if you want to, but you can also go to libertarianism.com to figure out what's going on, how we think. If you hear what Mike is talking about, he's not talking about we're going to force people to do stuff. He's saying we're going to give people options to make better Americans, better and happier, and he's going to make the world a better place. Well, that's what libertarianism is actually about. You want to figure that out, click that link or share that link. And guess what's the best part about it is they have merch. So if you like some cool shirts, some cool hats, you can buy it there if you want to, or take the classes and you get points and you get it for free. Now, if you want some cool Mike merch, that you're probably going to buy, but that's okay. Or show up at Reno. I'm sure he'll have some for you for free. Am I right?
We've got Austrian economist hats. And
there we go.
Buttons and pens, but you can't buy the buttons and pens. Those are free. But if you want the sexy Austrian economist hat, that's going to cost you $25.
There we go. So you can do it. Oh, I love it. So Mike, anything I should be talking about? Did I miss anything?
No, Larry, I think that's the big picture. We're starting early because we have a deficit in terms of name recognition, but I do believe that we have the right assets in place. You know, we have a very strong team. We have, I believe, the right theme in terms of bold messaging and the credibility to back that up, because I think it fits with my background in not only in law enforcement, but as an economist for decades and decades, if you add it all up. So I think it's going to be a very fun campaign, one that people enjoy watching and participating in to the extent to which they want to. We're reaching out to Mises people, to people who are not Mises, and we're in it to win, to be quite frank with you, at the risk of offending someone. That's what it's all about, and I believe that's what's going to happen.
I love it. Great. Well, guys, if you like what you're hearing, head over to MikeTerMaat.com. You see the link right there. Check out what he's doing. Watch his videos. He can take volunteers now. So if you want to, you can volunteer now. If you want to do it right now, he can take it. Always take donations. I think what your max is, what, 2,900? Is that right? Is that your max?
Yeah. If you give more than 2,900, I got to give some back. So be careful.
Yes. So I know some of you are like, but I want to give them $3,000. You can't. Rip that check up, rewrite it, 2,900, and send it over to them. Or just use your credit card. It's fine. But if you want to help them out, do that there. It's awesome. I appreciate that. Mike, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having me on the show once again. It's a terrific format. Thank you.
Excellent. And guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.